What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and let's talk about the updates to opportunity attacks and how they might be beneficial for you to use them on your allies. Again, there's a lot of funky little adjustments here, but I will say if you like what I do here, please consider subscribing to the channel. It is one small little click for you, and it helps me a lot. And honestly, there's going to be a bunch of videos coming out over the next ever really at this point as we gear up, because the Dungeon Master's Guide's not that far behind, so we'll have video content on that as well. So what I wanted to show you is the updated language for opportunity attacks. So take a look right here to my side, and you can see that it's pretty much what you expect. However, there is some things that might make it interesting, right? So it says, if you move heedlessly past your foes, you put yourself in danger by provoking an opportunity attack. Now, that may be important as how that's written, but if you jump down, it talks about how to avoid an opportunity attack, right? You can take the disengage action. We all know this. If you teleport or have some other means of moving without it, for example, right, if you're like a rogue, right, you can cunning action disengage as a bonus action. You don't provoke an attack of opportunity for forced movement, right? It goes into the opportunity of like, if an explosion knocks you back past somebody, then that's not going to trigger it. If you shove somebody past an enemy, that won't do it either. There are certain spells that force someone to walk away from you. That is not technically forced movement. But what I really want to focus in on this last little bit here, where it says making an opportunity attack. You can make an opportunity attack when a creature that you see leaves your reach. It is not a foe that leaves your reach. It is a creature that you can see that leaves your reach. To make that attack, take a reaction to make one melee attack with a weapon or an unarmed strike against that creature. The attack occurs right before it leaves your reach. Now, why am I bringing that up? Well, it says a creature. Your allies count as creatures. Anything, basically, that's not an object counts as a creature. So what's important is now you are capable of making opportunity attacks against your allies. Now, you might be saying, Ted, that seems kind of silly. Like, why would I care so much about that? And I can understand why. And what I'm doing right now is actually going into looking at what it says in the older version of the Player's Handbook from 2014 to see what it says here. It says, for an opportunity attack, if we go ahead and pull this up just so you can see the difference, you make an opportunity attack when a hostile being the keyword here, hostile creature that you can see moves out of your reach. The difference being there is the new Player's Handbook says when a creature leaves your reach. Now, what's important to note is it says you can make an opportunity attack, and what it mentions specifically in here is you can make an opportunity attack with a weapon or an unarmed strike. Now, I'd like to point out that the way you initiate a grapple in 2024 is through an unarmed strike. You basically have the opportunity when you go to make an unarmed strike to either deal damage by punching them, grapple them, or shove them. These are all aspects of unarmed strike now, right? So whenever you use your unarmed strike, you can choose one of the following effects: damage, grapple, or shove. And again, if it's a shove, the target must make a dexterity or strength saving throw. It chooses which, and you either push it 5 feet away or cause it to get the prone condition. This is triggered off your strength modifier typically, and the shove is possible only if the target is no more than one size larger than you. But what this means with this new updated rules is that when an ally goes to move past you, you can use your reaction to shove them if you wanted to, or grapple them potentially. So play out a couple of those scenarios in your mind, right? If an ally's in a situation where they might be provoking an opportunity attack and they go to move by you, you could then use your reaction to make an unarmed strike against them and shove them, therefore initiating forced movement, pushing them past somebody, maybe out of the way of some sort of damaging effect or out of a way to initiate them into a better spot for an opportunity attack. Or here's a wild one, right? Let's say they were going to move in a situation. We talked about a little bit about some spells have updated We'll get to it in a future video, but now Spirit Guardians works as soon as somebody enters the Spirit Guardian space. If they like end their movement in such a place or are going to move out of the way, you could basically knock your ally into a space where they could basically pull somebody into an emanation that they wouldn't have done previously. But yeah, anything you can do, there's this shove, you could knock your ally prone. Not that that's necessarily a thing you'd want to do, but there's an opportunity for that. So more or less, it's the shove is where we're kind of going with this. Giving them essentially 5 feet of extra movement without provoking attacks of opportunity by them doing this. I mean, not that it could come up too much, but right, if you've grappled an ally, then an enemy's not grappling that ally. So potentially there's a benefit for you to reaction, like if your ally wasn't going to move anyway, or was just doing this situation, you could grapple them so the enemy can't. But where this also comes into even more of an interesting situation is when you look at the feat, which I'm sure you're all thinking of at this point, Warcaster. And as we know, Warcaster allows you to cast a spell in favor of doing an unarmed strike or doing an attack as an opportunity attack. So if we read the updated version of Warcaster, which I'm pretty sure is exactly the same as the one we're used to, but yeah, reactive spell. When a creature provokes an opportunity attack from you by leaving your reach, you can take a reaction to cast a spell at that creature rather than making an opportunity attack. It must have a casting time of 1 action and must target only that creature. So what's important to note is like this is now a way you can in theory apply buffs or even healing outside of your turn. So if your ally's hurt and they're looking to move away and you can't get to heal them because your turn already passed, or they just took the damage after your turn went and they move past you and you have Warcaster, once they leave your reach, they've technically provoked an opportunity attack from you for which you could use reactive spells to cast Cure Wounds on them, let's say, as an example, or pop them with haste or whatever the case may be. So this is probably not an intended interaction, but it's a really interesting concept of you now being able to utilize opportunity attacks in a defensive way to aid your allies by either pushing them out of the way, essentially granting them increased movement or allowing them to bypass opportunity attacks, or in the case of Warcaster, actually allow them to heal or provide some other sort of benefit to them, as long as it targets only them. I mean, there are certain spells, I think like Vortex Warp, where it lets you teleport somebody. If they leave your reach, you could then use your reaction to cast a spell like Vortex Warp on them to teleport them somewhere else. But it was them moving past you that triggered it. So Warcaster really just went up in its value, in my opinion, significantly. Not that Warcaster wasn't great already, but with this new interaction with the updated opportunity attack rules, it allows for some pretty crazy shenanigans. So there you go, folks. That's my little update here on the changes to opportunity attack. This is another one that people, again, are calling out as a pretty interesting interaction with the changing of words. And like I've mentioned in previous videos, there are a lot of instances where they remove one word from the terminology of something and it drastically changes how it's used, right? For example, opportunity attacks removing hostile creature to just a creature. Now, maybe there was too much semantical debate on what constitutes a hostile creature, and that's why they decided to remove it. Like, well, if, you know, the other player character's been kind of a jerk to me tonight, I could consider them hostile, therefore I could do this. And maybe that was a way for people to try to get to the point that we're at where you could use opportunity attacks to aid allies in some way. But I think they're doing this thing like, you know, what constitutes anything that seemed like it might have had a nuanced response in that what constitutes a hostile creature. This reminds me of things people used to suggest about with like Hex back in the day. I think Hex was like you can transfer Hex to another creature, like another hostile creature, and if you upcast Hex, the duration increases. So people used to recommend carrying like a jar. This was, again, we're talking early 5e, and probably a lot of this got mitigated, but like carrying a jar of bees and then shaking up the jar of bees so that the jar of bees are hostile to you. So when your enemy dies, you transfer Hex to the bees or a singular bee within the jar of bees. So that way you don't have to recast Hex at a later point. You've got it. You're concentrating on Hex on the jar of bees. And then when you take a short rest, you can then refresh your spell slots as a warlock. Little silly things like that, that again, well, if I shake a jar of bees, aren't they a hostile creature? You know, stuff like that. So maybe that's why that got removed. But some of these instances, like we talked about two-weapon fighting, not stating in the other hand, just stating it needs to be made with a different weapon. Same thing with like somatic spell components now say things like with a hand, not a free hand. So, like, again, maybe what constitutes a free hand, meaning that now it seems like as long as I have a hand, regardless of what I'm holding in it, I can do somatic components. And maybe that was to get around some of the funkiness that could be done with like shields and emblems for like clerics and paladins. I don't know. But lots of little instances where a singular word being removed from a description drastically changes its functionality in the terms of mechanics. So, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I'll see you all next time.